أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Okay, so I'm gonna be continuing speaking about friendships, and today I just want to reflect on the concept of frenemies, because I feel like it is a big deal and um it's something that it is spoken about a lot, but I think it's spoken about from an angle of resentment and all girls are horrible, blah 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 blah. When in reality, I think it should be spoken about in a different context of grace and development. And yeah, I just want to speak about my experiences and my opinions about it. So the first time I encountered a friend of me was when I was like 10. And I had this person in my primary school who I considered the sister. And yeah, like one day she just came up to me. She was like, "Oh my god, I wish you were like stupid and I was smart, and I wish you were poor and I was rich." And she was going through a lot in her life basically. And in school they put you in sets. I was in one of the top sets. She was in one of the bottom sets, and her financial situation at home wasn't too good. My financial situation at home actually wasn't too good either, but I was doing slightly better than her. And that was the first time I really encountered what it's like to have someone who you really love as a friend, but there was some sort of resentment there. And obviously, I was 10-ish around that time, so I didn't really know that this was a friend of me. And as you can tell, this was stemmed from jealousy. This was stemmed from her going through something difficult and not being able to see past the fact that I seem to have it easy. That whole perception of you thinking life is so difficult for you and everything bad's happened to you and the world's against you, and then seeing someone else and thinking, oh my gosh, their life is so easy, is so toxic, because first of all, that's just not true. No one's life is easy all the time, and no one's life is difficult all the time. But two, even if you feel like that, it's not right to then project your you know, your feelings of anger onto someone else and make them feel like they don't deserve the good things that are happening to them. So yeah, like I had a series of other frenemies as well. Um, in secondary school, very similar thing. Not to the point where my girl saying, where my girl saying that I wish you were poor, blah blah blah, but in other ways, like people not being, people not accepting me, people not accepting the good things that happen to me, or like maybe they'll with it all good things that happen to me. People being jealous, people chatting craps, backbiting is a big thing with frenemies. And guys, when I tell you, like I'm speaking about it like it's cool and it's nothing, but it really, really hurt. Because a lot of these people I'm talking about, I genuinely love them as a friend, and I never would have done what they did to me to them. That being said, upon reflection in this life, I realised a lot of things, and I'm pretty sure I realised more things. Um, First of all, they hurt my feelings. Let's just say that. Like I've never been through like a romantic breakup or anything like that, but friendship breakups, they hurt, and I've been through a few of them. And I have to say, like, one of the best things about breaking up with a friend, or realizing that one of your friends secretly hates you, even though it's painful, is you run back to Allah, you run back to God. Whatever your perception is, whatever you understand the reason is, whatever the situation is, you run back to God, and anything that makes you run back to God is always beneficial, at least in that moment, right? I'm not saying you deserve frenemies. I'm not trying to gaslight anyone, but I'm just saying that in that moment, if you go back to Allah, is that is always good, and I've always gone back to Allah. And the reality of this world is that we're not here forever. Like, it only makes sense that once in a while your situation is going to make you run back to Allah, because this world is just a test, like it's not actually real. So that's number one. That's one good thing about having frenemies, or one way I want to reframe this. Another thing is humanizing people. Like I feel like As long as people feel insecure and they do know how to manage their insecurities, this pattern will always happen. And I think, like I remember speaking about this with someone, because I used to think that I can't have insecure friends. I can't have people who are insecure, and I feel like I still stand by that. But I really want to emphasize there's a difference between having insecurities and being an insecure person. I feel like having insecurities means that you acknowledge there's some certain things about you don't like, and you deal with that as you please. But being an insecure person means that you as a person are unhappy with you, you know, you as a person, that you just don't like yourself that much. And people like that are just easily triggered. You can say the smallest thing and they will make it a competition because they don't like themselves. So anything that you say, anything you do is automatically better than them, and it's automatically oh, I want an now top. Do you want on top or whatever? And I just have I'm sorry that you feel like you're not good enough, but that's actually not a me problem. And most importantly, even if you are an insecure person, why would you then punish someone else because of that? Like, if you feel horrible, or you feel ugly, or you feel you've underachieved, whatever, okay, even if you are in competition with someone else, which is diabolical, why would you now make someone else suffer? Why would you now put other people down or make other people feel small or start projecting in a very passive aggressive way or even an aggressive way? Like, why would you think that's acceptable? So I keep my distance from people who, when I clock that they're kind of insecure and they're not really like standing on their business. So I just feel like it's just a space for really toxic things to progress. But all in all, I just feel like insecurity is basically one of the biggest causes of frenemies. And it's kind of sad. Like, at the end of the day, none of us are perfect. All of us have things we're insecure about. But it's not an excuse. Do you know what I mean? And so why I think it's important to see frenemies in this light is because you're able to give people more grace. Not the grace to step on you and treat you rubbishly and chat craps to you, but in a way you're like, do you know what? This isn't a me problem, because it isn't. It's a them problem. And you kind of feel sorry for them, especially when there's normally like some sort of childhood trauma that comes with it. But essentially, yeah, I mean, a lot of frenemies, a lot of people who project onto you, it's a them problem, it's not a you problem. And I just think it's good to name and point that out, so that anyone who goes through frenemies or anyone who has that projection of insecurities, you don't feel attacked, okay? So yeah, so the first thing is it brings you closer to Allah, like the pain of it brings you closer to Allah. And the second thing is, so most of the time it is a them problem, not a you problem. And in case anyone doesn't understand what I mean when I say project insecurities, because I think people use that a lot. Projecting your insecurities means, if let's say like you're really insecure about like your intelligence, like you don't think you're that smart. Or even the other way, which is really interesting, like some people think they're really smart, but they hold it so much to them, so much to themselves, and they don't realize it, but they actually are still insecure about it, like, because it's their everything. So it's like tying to their whole personality. So let's say they have a friend who they think is smarter than them. They will now be threatened. So if one, you have insecurity, two, you now feel threatened, but three is when it becomes toxic, because now you're in competition with this person, and now everything they do, you're going to be trying to make them feel like, either convince them that you're smarter than them, or convince them that they're not smarter than you. So it will come in the form of telling them straight to their face, you're not that smart. Telling them, oh, you're so stupid. Making sly comments like, oh, you think you're so smart, don't you? Stuff, guys, when I tell you stuff like this has literally happened to me, like some of these people have literally told me like, use your brain. Some of these people have literally said like, just comments like that. That's what happens when someone is intimidated by a feature you have. It could be intelligence, it could be beauty, it could be money, it could be family situation, it could just be your smile, it could be your aura, it could be anything. Trust me, it's crazy how people are insecure about the weirdest things, but it's true. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to say is that another cause of frenemies is this is kind of related to point two, but the whole idea of like not being able to see themselves, like not being able to compare themselves to themselves. Like it's one thing to be insecure about something, but some people can't separate their lives from other people. Like it's kind of like just the impact of social media, how people feel sad when they see other people progress. People will see like people going on holiday and getting married and having kids and doing A, B, C, D, F, G, and all of a sudden they feel sad. And the reason is because they are now comparing that person to themselves and they're using that person as a benchmark of success. And we see that a lot on social media and why people are feeling depressed, blah, 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 blah. But really, it's not social media, it's comparison. You are comparing yourself and you may not recognize it, you may not acknowledge it, but it's happening subconsciously. And so every time you go on this person's page or you go on social media, you are seeing lives of people and subconsciously you are seeing and identifying lives of success. And then you compare it back to your life and you're feeling sad. And this is what some people do with their friends or their frenemies, sorry. They do with their frenemies. Instead of them to mind their business or mind their goals, I should say, like mind their goals, have their own strategy, have their own plan of what they want to do and achieve in life, they see their friends doing something and all of a sudden they feel like they need to compare and they feel inferior. And a great example of this is like, have you, let's just say you had a friend who was into law, yeah? Your friend was into law and your friend has always been into law, but you have now gone into tech. Now you're chatting about tech. It's on your socials, you speak to them about it because they're your friend. And all of a sudden now this person wants to get into tech. This is like perfect example of people who compare themselves to you because now they they are using you as a benchmark of success. They now think tech is successful, but in reality, they probably are not interested in tech. And so basically, the cause of that problem is basically that they don't have their own definition of success and they're not standing on their definition of success. They're easily swayed. And it does stem from insecurity, but it's a different type of insecurity. It's more like you're just you're insecure, you're insecure, you're kind of like easily swayed in your goals and your ambitions. And it happens to a lot of people who just don't have strong conviction of their goals, of what they have to offer in this world. When people are not sure of what they want to do, where they want to go, of their goals, and they see someone else excelling or doing their thing, they will feel like they want to capitalize on the other person's opportunity because they see everyone else's achievements as better than theirs because they have no confidence in their own goals. Um, okay. The other thing I want to talk about is the difference between envy and jealousy. I actually feel like jealousy in itself, how I see it, is basically wanting what other people want. What other people have. I feel like wanting what other people have in itself is not bad, right? And it can be used to motivate you. It can be used to, I believe it can be used to kind of prompt you. Like if you see someone doing something admirable and you think, wow, like I would love to do something like that, it can make you realize something about your goals or ambitions that can motivate you, right? And obviously, this sounds a bit contradictory to the point I just made, but it's not quite the same. People who compare themselves aggressively will go out of their way to do something they don't even like doing just to make themselves feel good. This kind of jealousy I'm talking about is genuine. Like, it actually is. Like, maybe you want to be a doctor, but then you see someone like doing charity work, and now all of a sudden you're like, do you know what, I'm a little bit jealous because I want to do charity work. Like, I want to maybe be a doctor in a charity way. You know what I mean? So like, it's more like an inspiration kind of thing. It's not like, oh, they did that, so I have to do that. And so it's kind of different. But it's a thing where like, you are more inspired more than anything. But even if you're not inspired, it could just be a thing where like, you know, someone you know is getting married, someone you know is having kids, etc., etc., and you just identify this desire that they have something that you want. Again, I personally don't think this act itself or this emotion itself is wrong. And I definitely don't believe this emotion itself is evil. Where it becomes evil is when you allow this emotion to fester in you for a long time without addressing it, and you go to the extent of doing something about it to intentionally harm the other person. That's when it becomes evil. And I think it's important to differentiate the two, because being jealous in itself is not bad. I wouldn't go to my friend and tell her, by the way, I'm jealous of you, right? That's a bit weird. But saying it, naming it, maybe journaling it, it's, you know, that could be the end of it. When you are jealous of someone and you hold it in and you pretend and you're around that person and you keep being triggered, that's when you're more likely to do the acts of envy. And acts of envy are evil. And I think when you get to that stage, that's when you're entering frenemy, or that's when you're just entering just evil behaviour. And we see that behaviour with Habil and Qabil in the Quran. In case you don't know, these were one of the first human beings in the world, and these are two brothers, and they had two sisters, and so they were supposed to marry the other person's. So they were given birth in pairs. So Habil was given birth with a sister, and then Qabil was given birth with a sister. So they were given to birth in pairs of girl boy, if that makes sense. So Habil has his sister that he was born with, and then Qabil has his sister that he was born with. And at that time, because there wasn't a lot of people, they were supposed to marry the other person's sister. Okay? But Qabil liked his own sister, so he didn't want Habil to marry his sister, if that makes sense. So that was an act, that there was an emotion of jealousy. Identifying you want something there and then, I don't think in itself is evil. But that jealousy that Kobe felt led him to going to the extent of killing his brother. This is where jealousy festered. He felt over entitled. He felt angry. He felt, envious. And it turned into action. That's the key thing. Like, managing your emotions, it can really save you from doing something evil. Had he managed his emotions, even if he wasn't happy with the outcome, it wouldn't have got to the extent of him killing his brother. So it's when you actually do something evil, that's when it's like, okay, now you've acted upon this feeling that you were feeling. And, now Qabil killed his brother, and this wasn't just any ordinary death. This was the first death ever, right? So he's now responsible for the act of death in general, which is crazy. And going back to the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think it's fair that we make people who feel jealous evil, because it's humane and it's just natural. I don't actually think it's bad. I think what we should shame is the acts of envy. Jealousy, feeling jealous is natural, it's normal, and there are ways to manage it. And I think that's humane. But going to the extent of intentionally harming someone or doing any actions or praying against someone or doing anything evil because you don't want someone to have what Allah has already written for them is when it becomes evil. And I think it's important to highlight that, because when you're able to name jealousy within friendships, you can hold yourself accountable, or you can hold someone else accountable for what they're doing, even if it's not necessarily a conversation, even if it's just you journaling, or even if it is a conversation. It's something you can have without it being so dysfunctional and so like erratic, and oh no, this person jealous of me, she hates me, then you cut off the whole friendship, etc., etc. Like, it doesn't have to get to that extent. It could maybe mean that you need to take a break. Maybe you need to, like, journal. I think just letting it out and identifying that you don't hate that person. You just you just want something that they have, you know? And I remember like listening to someone, and she was basically saying how like she really wanted to get married at a point, and one of her friends invited her to a wedding, her wedding obviously, like her friend's wedding, and she had to say no. And I think this is exactly what I mean. Like, if you know you feel jealous or you want something that someone else has, feeling the actual jealousy doesn't mean that the friendship has to end. Okay, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. But if you allow yourself, maybe if that person went to that wedding, she went to the wedding, and then because she was jealous, she now threw the cake on the floor. Now you act like an evil person. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to emphasize that, because I feel like jealousy not being managed well is the reason why there's a lot of frenemies. And it doesn't have to be that way. Cool.